How businesses get funded. What most business owners never learn. Hi, everyone. Welcome in. We'll get started in a few moments. I'll get into the share screen to show you how businesses get funded, what underwriters, lenders look for when evaluating, analyzing a business, and how to properly structure everything for longer term growth so you understand that you're building something long lasting and you understand the information, consume it, and most importantly, take action on it. If you're with us live right now, please let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Have you received funding? Are you having trouble? Any questions? And at any moment in time, you can leave me a comment and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. So, with that said, let's get into the share screen. Slideshow. How businesses get funded. The business funding roadmap most business owners never learn by me, Michael Granados, a business architect. And what that means is my role is as someone who knows how to create this from the bottom up, top down, fix, grow, expand, scale them. I thoroughly assess, evaluate, analyze businesses, numbers, all areas strategically as a strategist. I love numbers. I'm very mathematical minded. I have a CFO, underwriting, engineering type mind. I was once an academic student studying chemical engineering before I went in the direction of business and I got my degree there. And so, as someone who reviews a lot of financials, bank statements, credit reports, I'm very quiet, the analytical, cerebral, introverted type, less words, more action oriented. So, believe me when I say that doing this video, it's very hard and uncomfortable for me. It takes a lot of courage. I've been in business for so many years that you can say it's somewhat easier, but doing a video is not my best format. However, I am here to serve you and give you the most and best amount of value so you can make the most educated decision and making sure you're going the right path when it comes to funding your business and more than just business and in life, growing as an individual. So, with all that said, I do funding at a high level, funding expert, do things on the real estate side, personal growth and development, self mastery. Now, for over 13 plus years at the time of you watching this video, if you watch it later, a year passes, it could be longer. And so I just wanted you to know those pieces in what I do, that I'm more than just someone who can help you get funding. And I thoroughly look at everything numbers, customer acquisition cost, lifetime value, different metrics, and strategizing with you. And I'm in different markets, niches, etc. So, what you'll learn today, why most businesses don't have a funding problem, why businesses get declined and how to avoid it, how lenders and underwriters actually evaluate businesses, what makes a business truly quote unquote fundable, how to choose the right funding for the right situation, and the business funding readiness framework I'll be showing you. So please stick with me. You'll get a lot of jam packed, valuable information. We'll try to go through this as fast, yet not so fast. I obviously don't want to keep you here too long. And if you can't watch the whole thing, come back to make sure you watch it all the way through. It's again very jam packed, full of value. That this is stuff you're just not going to get anywhere and everywhere. You search for it, don't find it. It's scattered all over the place. It's not up to date. It's not out there the way you wish it should be. And having someone as a guide in your corner, an advisory role as someone who will help guide you and understands how to build businesses and look at them, operate them. I'm better behind the scenes as a back end person partner. That's my role best with processes, systems, reviewing not only my businesses, but that of others, and in the operational side and in other areas too. So just wanted you to know that. Why this matters. Most business owners were never taught how business funding really works. Many only learn after they've already been declined and or approved. Choosing the wrong funding can cost thousands of dollars. The wrong repayment structure can hurt your cash flow immediately. Becoming funding ready creates more opportunities for you. The goal is not to simply get approved. The goal is to make better long-term business decisions. So it's very important you understand that each of these stages matter so much in your education and how important it is to grow, and not just in business, again, in life as a person, and putting your best foot forward so we can do this in the best way possible and make it most energy and time efficient for you and I and everyone else in the process. So again, why this matters, you can see right there. Just want to make sure. And before I tell you a little bit about my own journey, I want to answer a very simple question. Why does this really matter? It's one thing to say it matters, but truthfully speaking to and saying, how much, how far do I need to go before I understand how much this actually matters? Why spend 30 minutes learning about business funding plus 30 minutes we were to go over when you may not even need funding at this moment today or in the near future? One thing I've noticed over the years is that most business owners don't start learning about funding because they're curious. You don't just wake up and say, ah, I need funding. Sure, you do, but there's a problem, something deeper associated to that we have to diagnose and figure out. How do we solve that main problem if that is the true diagnosis and not just covering up a symptom and some symptoms, excuse me. So people, they start learning because something had happened. Your customer, someone else's had paid late. Maybe payroll is due on Friday. It could be that your equipment is broken or it's about to be. You need to catch it before it happens. You need to replace it. Something else that's used, new, similar, a new model. It could be another opportunity that came along the way that required you to enhance and add capital. Have your sales slowed down? Is it a revenue problem more than a cash flow issue? It could be that your inventory had to be purchased before there was a busy season. How does the turnover of inventory look like? Type of inventory? How much in units? What if it's the interest rates? Look at the economy right now. Geopolitics, the global climate. In every part, micro, macro strategy, the markets, bonds, equities, crypto, metals. It goes on and on. Whatever the reason, people are learning because they're really feeling the pressure and they're under it. And in pressure, it doesn't always lead you to make the best decision and it gets you to the best outcome. You could say, well, you work better under pressure and therefore it will. But when it comes to adding capital, and that's the thing that we need to put a fire extinguisher over and to do it immediately and to plan ahead. When a lot of people feel pressure, and I've been one of these many years ago, I remember going in to get funding. I've been there. I understand the thinking behind it and making sure you're doing it the right and best way possible under the right person, because it's more than just getting funding from anyone and everyone. It's about having the right person. People often ask, where can they get the money the fastest? They think there's a better question to be said, or there isn't. What I would think is there is a much better one. It's more so asking, how can I prepare myself and my business so I have better options before I ever need funding? And it's one thing to say, hmm, I could use the funding later, but it's good to have it now. And it depends on the type of funding, obviously, too. So they are two different ways and modes of thinking. One is more reactionary, the other one is more observant and understanding and having more preparation. And with preparation, usually comes with better options. Like practice, I don't want to say makes perfect, but practice makes better. Practice unwrinkles the things that need to be unwrinkled. So this is why I truly believe there needs to be more funding education, and it matters along the way in your journey before you submit an application, before you go into a pre-qualification application. You have to understand how lenders think, understand cash flow, leaks, deficits, advantages, what is advantageous versus what isn't, what's more of a risk, but it's still advantageous. Calculated decisions and in your critical thinking. Understanding then your financial statements, understanding truthfully your own business, stepping aside from just being an everyday day to day operator, because I get it. I was once there. And you put aside in the rear view mirror, it's there. You're like driving your car, you can see it. There's the off ramp. You know you need to take that one. You just know you just can't go there yet. You have to keep driving down the freeway. And every now and then you'll get out on that exit and you'll find new things. Oh, there's a new development project. I didn't know that was there. I had taken this exit before. Now they're adding more. Another commercial building. There's all this dirt and land available. And knowing all this gives you more control over the decision making process you will make now and later on. I've learned this through my own journey. I've learned it from helping so many people get funding and those who haven't been able to get funding yet. That preparing before you need funding usually gives you more choices again. There's that word, choice and choices. Than the person and in their business trying to figure everything out during an emergency, in a tight crunch, all at once. So this is what all of this is about today, and not just helping you understand funding financing, but helping you become the type of person first, business owner second, that's prepared when your opportunities or challenges then appear. So looking at the positive and looking at the negative, upside, downside. Now, before I teach you how lenders, underwriters evaluate businesses and how they actually do it, because what you may know, you have to unlearn. And if you don't know much, there's more to it than what you might be hearing and seeing out there. And I think it's only fair that I tell you how I got here, because the way I think about funding now, and I will think about it in the future, it's very different than when I first started in business over 13 plus years ago. So let me go to the next slide. Here's my story and a few stops I'll share that I had along the way. You can see there I have a financial logistics background and all the other bullet points. But I think what's more important to see is who I am at my core. On the right, you can see two images. And on the bottom is me with my wave. On the top right, my dad to the far right, my younger brother to the left of him. We're usually 6 or 7 years plus apart. And then you can see me there holding my younger brother's son, my nephew, baby Luca. And to the left is my mother. Underneath, where I love to go fish. Nearby, it's a fishing spot we always go. My younger brother will tag along. I'm more of the fishing type, or at least I would say. And I think he would agree. And my dad loves to fish too. So we're the two that love to go out there to the water and just to relax. It's not even about catching a fish, just relaxing. Not saying much, a little bit of music, but we get it. And that was me holding a small mouth bass that I caught not too long ago. And I was so proud and happy because I hadn't caught one of those. And in such a long time of periods of not being able to fish, the weather, the climate, and going out there. And behind me is my uncle sitting back there. I don't know if you can see that, but that's my uncle back there in the far corner in the blue. And it was at one time before I had caught this fish that I had lost a huge one, like what, 4 feet, 4+ feet, and a common carp. And it had just unhooked. I was reeling it in, and instead of pushing it in with my foot because we didn't have a net to cast it in, should have used my foot. I was moving them with my hand, both slipped and it went back in the water. Lessons learned, things happen. Next time I'll make sure to have that piece of equipment with me. And I just love the fish. I was once a Division I soccer player too, an academic. You see, a business degree, as I said earlier, started in chemical engineering space, then I went into business. So I wanted to start a business. I have a lot of adversity. I have a Salvadorian Mexican American background. My dad's from El Salvador, my mom's from Fresno, and her mom from the Guadalajara area. So that's where I get it from. I was born in Fountain Valley, California, in the Orange County area. In 2003, we moved up to Washington State, where I now reside and have been for so long. Went back there for school, sports, worked out there, not just in financial logistics. I've been in manufacturing, construction, field positions. I know what hard labor looks like. I have always been more, though, up here in my mind, cerebrally and analytical type work. Not much for words, an action taker, as I mentioned. So I know what these roles take, and sometimes you have to do things you don't want to do. And a lot of this was in my younger 20s. I've understood those roles. I've understood what warehousing takes, what being in a courier administrative dispatch position, administrative tasks, to a financial logistics position for a huge contracting company where there's a downturn. I'm already underpaid. I stayed here for stability reasons post academics, thinking also the person in front of me would have retired, and that didn't end up happening. And unfortunately, 50 plus people get relieved. I have to go back on unemployment benefits and food stamp cards. It was one of, if not the hardest times in my life. Going to have a family meal when I wish I had more savings, I would pay, and then other times I wouldn't speak up. And as you know, I'm the oldest of two, so I was the one who would lead the path academically, and in other ways set the path. And I took that upon myself too. Going to pay with my EBT, hoping nobody would be in front and behind, let alone anybody would know me, recognize me. I wouldn't even look the person in the eyes at the register a lot of times because I felt so embarrassed, nervous, out of it. I'd walk out of there with my bag so grateful and thankful. Then the thought of it, I have to be back. All of this going on, feeling like a burden to my family when they would tell you that I wasn't one, and that's not what it was. But it's what it felt like to me. Through this journey in that 9 to 5, before I was relieved because I was hearing some things, I knew I didn't want just another job, another career, more education, more certifications. So, long story short of this is I was sitting in my cubicle in a 3-story building, I kid you not, where I'm usually on the computer, database, Excel, spreadsheets, budgeting, shipping and receiving, coordinating with different departments, lifting up media boxes from time to time to deliver. And I am having lunch. I sit down with my blue lunch bag. I remember it so well. I take out my sandwich and I set aside my Dorito bag of chips with a water bottle. Literally, that was it. And my coworker is out for lunch. I'm sitting in the cubicle. This is one where people can walk by and just look at you and kind of give you a wave. And like, hello. Like, not enough privacy here. And I kid you not, above me is a very bright, yet feeling dim light. And below me is a brown floor with cracks going in different directions, looking like it would open up and a black hole would open up. And I would get sucked right down underneath and I wouldn't be able to claw my way out even fast enough. And when I would, I'd get right back down to where I started, even faster than the first time I fell in. How much more of this can I take? And that light, I kid you not, because at the bottom of a dungeness looking area, looking like a UFO is hovering above me. Like, I'm ready, go ahead. Probe. It also felt like I was in an interrogation room, like somebody would open the door, walk up to the table, and slam their hands on it and ask me, where was I on the night of? So I'm having my lunch and I get a message on my Snapchat social media app. Not sure if you're still familiar with that. And an old friend, why? He responded to the teriyaki meal I had the night before. And so we caught up, reconnected, and he was sharing with me about e-commerce, different businesses. He was in the trucking business space himself at that time. And it jogged the memory back in my mind. I had tried things before, but it just wasn't for me. It wasn't the direction. And so I thought about it again. So after work is done, I literally couldn't get fast up the elevators. There's stairs, but I went up the elevator with a few the people in my department. And I go through the double doors. It appears in front of me is the parking lot. And then I gingerly start walking up to my red Honda beat up Accord at the time because I was in California before, I came back to Washington State, etc. And at the top of the car was beat down by the sun and on the hood. So I get in my car and I'm driving this through, every light was green, about 5 lights, every one of them green, like it's a sign. I get to my driveway, park, open the car, put my my backpack on that I had, my Jansen backpack. Still have it. It's in the closet. I don't use it. And I walked up to the stair steps, opened the door. It opened right away. I set my backpack down that was hanging on my left shoulder. So I set it in front of the stair steps. And I walked gingerly again around the corner where I lock eyes with my computer on my countertop. I pick it up, I turn around almost 45 or so degrees, set it on my dining table. And like a lot of us do, is we begin to research, we begin to look in and see what we can build and do. And in that, I watched a lot, saw a lot, And I started taking action in building a website, understanding about hosting and domains and all this stuff. And I got into the digital marketing agency, lead generation space, and went from there. And then at around the same time, I started building a business around the health space, in the health affiliate marketing space, and started understanding that. And I built those for many years before I went into another, which was helping then people with CRMs, understanding software as a service, these different tools so they can apply to their own business, like I have, and plenty more that is useful. After that, I made my way into the funding finance niche. And that's what a lot of people know me for. And I've spent a lot of years in this space, even before I fully got in it. I observed it from a distance. What did I go through that I can help people? What mistakes did I made that I can help people learn so they don't make them, or they can unlearn those and get on the right path? Because I wish I had someone when I was going through the funding process that knew more than just how can I help you get funding? How much revenue does your business generate? It's more than that. It's about having somebody who understands business development, who understands how to strategize, not just when it comes to matching you with the right service for your right source of funds. That's one way to strategize, but there are levels to it. Layer one, two, three, there are differences in how you build out your business, how you carve that out, to what you do next, even before you start building your business and setting that up. There's so many things to it. And if you hadn't learned the mindset before, you'll learn the mindset throughout in building your business. And I would say a lot of the times, more so when you're building a digital one, it almost forces you a lot of the times too. So I've strengthened my mind. I keep strengthening it with my habits, my routines, my faith, my spirit, my emotional control. I work on myself as much as I can physically. Wasn't given the genetics, but that's what makes me work harder. And I do it for the mind. I do it to calibrate that and to build a callus. Like if you haven't heard David Goggins say, like it's building the calluses in the mind. And I've listened to a lot of influential people, not just him. And I read a lot of books. I love to read. I read a lot of personal development business books these days. I can read others too, but those are the ones I stick to. I love listening to rock music, all types of genre. And as you can see, I'm a family man at the end of the day. So in business ownership, you learn a lot. You discover a lot about yourself. In business funding, you will discover a lot too. In this full business development process that I have learned and acquired and been able to help a lot of people and their business and businesses understand, if they're asking themselves the right questions, I'm asking the right questions as an entrepreneur. That's what we do, is we ask not just questions, we ask the right ones to help you also ask those questions yourself and fill in the gaps, infer when the question isn't asked. So learning through these mistakes, through trials and error of many years, discovering underwriting, what lenders want, the full process from start to finish, reverse engineering that, and then helping others improve their funding decision making process from start to finish, because that's what matters a lot. Before you go into an application, what do you expect to see? What would be this? What's it going to look like if you paused here? What would you need to submit? What's the best way to submit it? How is it the best way for you to get the details? And a lot of what I do is by sending Google documents. In fact, I have a welcome package email that I usually send people that I can send you. And around this post in the body and the pinned comment, look there for more information if I have my email, if not, or if I have it somewhere else, on how to get access to things. But for now, let's continue moving forward. And uh, I just wanted to make sure you understood that when it comes to a lot of this. And so before I teach you how these lenders and underwriters are thinking, because I have an underwriting mind, I do a lot of pre-underwriting these days, and seeing things through the back end is my favorite piece of it, and the components of it. Not being one who's a talker. And that benefits you because you have someone who won't be spewing in your ears like that, someone who will take care of you and puts you before the business, puts you before the cart. And being in the right vehicle to do this is super important. So I do think it's only fair that you just understand more about as we go through this, that efficiency and effectiveness matters a lot. As you begin to build your business as a startup now, or if you've been in business or plan to build another one, you may have been like me, or will start to ask these kind of things. How do I grow? Where do I invest? How should I invest? When does funding make most sense? What if revenue becomes uh, inconsistent? I'll say inexistent. In existence. That's one piece. But what happens when it is inconsistent and you have dry spells, dry seasons, cash flow gaps? What if your customers pay late? Even the other way is if they pay on time or ahead of time, like, oh, did you know what to do after that? What if opportunities come along before you're financially ready? That's a big one that I would think that comes off the top of my mind. So, along this journey, all these questions I have, you have, I've been there. And I found myself helping business owners across many different industries explore their funding options. As you heard me say earlier, I had a friend in the trucking space. In the beginning, I started like that in trucking and digital business, understanding those businesses even deeper because that's what I wanted to focus on at that time. And then I just spur out from there. And I've helped business owners of all types of backgrounds, businesses, shapes, and sizes. And then private equity, private debt with investors and owners and big time figures and more. And so, what it comes down to at the end of the day are the values, vision, mission, morals, ethics, governing principles, purpose, character, and characteristic traits, that of an individual. You can say business, but individual first, the person. So it wasn't funding for me. Was it the first thing that I needed immediately or something small that I already had while I can ramp up and then get access? Or if I'm building another one, which I have built in the past, now we can use access to because of what I've built. But everybody's in a different situation on how they got started and get started in this. So all of this just naturally led me more into business development and being this person that I am today after having helped so many business owners and understanding their problems, pain points, their operations, how they make money, how they get customers, what is a supply and or demand constraint, what are the things going on that could get better and be better. So once I started understanding a lot of it from that point of view, and things that I didn't even learn in college, to be honest with you, what you learn in the real world is much different than what you learn in school. So I've applied so many of these principles to my own businesses and to helping so many others. But you stop looking at funding as the answer and you begin looking at the strategy. You have cash flow, margins, operations, customer acquisition, systems, long term planning. And then funding is just simply something that's one tool inside a much larger toolbox. Like you have the wrenches here, you have the screwdrivers, the flat, the screw head over here, a 1/4 inch, or whichever one it is, a micrometer, caliper. So it's really how I see things. And today it's just my role as a business architect. Yes, I do help you and others understand funding, but most importantly, is I enjoy helping business owners think through their financial decisions. And it's about their community and making a difference. And I see it. If there's a family or a couple that you're the one that they rely on most to get their groceries, or it could be another type of business, they're so dependent on you and they can't go somewhere else within a 10-mile radius. The smile you put on their face, smile you put on your employees and your own, shareholders, etc., if there are, and so much more. And then having just better decision making gives you a much stronger business. Stronger businesses, they have more funding opportunities over time. So let's get into the next slide. Oh, sorry. I had said helping others improve. Sorry, I was thinking that I hadn't said that. But I had. See, I'm not much of a talker. I'm a thinker and math guy. So this is the biggest funding myth. I need funding. It couldn't be said any simpler. I'm not giving you a how can I get funding? How much does it cost? Those are questions. More so, the how much does it cost is not something you should be asking first. You've asked that because you probably come from a place where you've tried or you have received funding or haven't, or what you're getting isn't right, or you're just contemplating and just trying to compare and analyze. There has to be something deeper. Is what is the actual benefit that you're receiving and value you're receiving from that funding, and can it surpass and exceed the cost of funds, the cost of the capital, interest, etc. There's much more to them than that. So the biggest funding myth I see is I need funding, but the reality of it is most businesses really don't have a funding problem. Many have these kind of problems. They have cash flow problems, pricing problems, marginal deficit problems, and that meaning contribution margin variable. And then when you look at revenue, you look at percentages, how much extra contribution margin could you have and you're leaving over? How many cents on the dollar? You're looking at revenue margin, cash flow, profitability margin. There's different segments to that and more fulfillment costs, planning problems, operational problems, timing problems. Sometimes a lot of what you hear with I need funding can be true. Businesses do need capital for expansion. There's equipment, inventory, real estate, you're hiring, growth. You have a lack of something, so you need to make up for something in a quick, tight pinch, purchase orders. You have more access to clothing, fabric. There's so many examples I can give you in each type of business, but I won't spend so much time on that right now. So there are many situations where funding is exactly what your business needs. But one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the years is this. Funding is often the first thing business owners they pick up on. Like, oh, this is the solution. But of course, we have to reverse engineer and think about what the problem is before we get into what the solution is. It isn't always the first problem, there's always another layering to it. One of the first things I ask is not how much funding do you need? I ask something completely different. What problem are we actually trying to solve? And if we didn't remove this primary or secondary, usually we begin with the primary problem, what opportunity cost would you have to forego? What's your next best alternative? There are many other questions in line with that segment than I would ask, like I have in the past. And if I don't understand the problem, I can't responsibly and be held so accountable to recommending and prescribing the solution to the diagnosis, not masking the symptoms. From there, I tend to ask more questions. Some of these that I would ask are what is preventing your business from getting where it needs to go? Why isn't it where it needs to be now? What seems to be the biggest risk, biggest issue, biggest drawback, a bottleneck, or more than one at this moment? You could also ask, what could it be then? If I solve this problem now, what other extra problem does it bring up? What would actually change? Would it be then revenue, the capacity to grow, production growth? So you open up more capacity, run more machines, get more materials, supplies, cash flow, profitability? Is it customer experience? Those answers tell me much more than simply hearing, I need 100K, I need 50,000, I need 2,000 just to get me by, and then we'll move up another funding level. I need 2 million. And that's the reality, though, is too, when you need funding, it's a rush to think, I need the highest amount that I can get today. But what about tranching? What about getting it in separate stages? In phase one, order of operations, phase two, to exceed and move cash flow into phase two if it's not expansion yet, but to stabilize that part of your growth. So there are commonalities and then there are differences in understanding how much you actually need versus what you should get started with. And if you couldn't get access to all that you wanted, could you get started with less? There's so much more to go into with that. But let me explain more about this and what I mean. Sometimes the real issue is cash flow. And at the end of it, what you always will hear me from time to time, I'll say, is protect your cash flow. It's always on the top of my mind is protecting your cash flow. That's why businesses go down under because they don't have any, they don't have enough of. So your business, other businesses, I see profit and loss, balance sheets, I see a lot. That business might be profitable. Customers, though, simply don't pay for 30, 45, or 60 days, or whatever the net terms are, or you're not paid like that. You're front loaded to go get the job done. You got paid immediately or paid per stage on the construction project. There's so many different ways you can say upfront, a draw, a lump sum, how it gets issued, and those timeline gaps. And if you had more demand come in today, would you be able to support it? What the inflows and outflows look like, average daily balances, non sufficient funds, negative days, and more, and things that underwriters underwrite, and things that I look at too. And be able to see, oh, I'm underwriting this. I'm looking at it from this point of view. Here are the bank statements. Here's the actual monthly debt capacity. Here is where it'd be over leveraged by this much percentage. We can't give you this much because of this. Here's what the annual cash flow looks like, and just so much more to derive and doing a cash flow profitability analysis and different numbers. So meanwhile, all of this is happening when customers don't pay and on time and when you expected them to. Do you have other jobs, bigger jobs, smaller jobs? What do you have to do? Find another core revenue stream and an alternative, another project, another size. Something hasn't come into completion. Something's holding you over where you need the funding. You need to get permits, an engineering team. You need to get it set up for so much. And meanwhile, payroll is due then on Friday. Your vendors, like the snap of their fingers, want their payment. And if you don't want to strain a relationship with the vendor, supplier, someone you've been with, somebody maybe you work for or something like that, and you can't find a replacement, and this is not going to work that way, you have to satisfy them. And so a lot of the times too, people are ready to take on projects, just they don't have the funding for it. Contracts are ready, bids, this and that. It's just not ready. Rent is due. You have a mortgage. So the business isn't necessarily itself broken. It's just cash is just moving in different directions at different times and different speeds. So understanding timeline with cash flow and how fast it moves in and out, and understanding those bank balances and average daily balances, and so much more starting and ending is more that I look at. And then every part when it comes to transactions and types of transactions, amount of deposits, fluctuations, consistencies, what happens there, types of deposits, what actual true revenue is, and so much more to pay attention to. So sometimes the business is just charging too little. Revenue does look well, looks healthy. Everyone is being busy, but after the expenses, very little is actually then left over. What do you get to take if you're not able to pay yourself a salary? That's a huge deficit because you have to cover payroll, because you have to pay others, because you have the inventory turnover that's so slow, or you don't have quick, short cash and cash flow conversion cycles. They're too spread out. Something happened where you have to find a replacement. You're renovating, something tore down. A lot can happen. So more funding doesn't, I don't want to say doesn't always, but doesn't permanently solve when you have underpricing of your goods. A product-centered offering in like food and service, food and beverage, for example, you have an e-commerce business or you have something else separate. Maybe you're a business coach and you have your own products you offer. And then you have just strictly services. You have services where they can be variable and it may not be the time in the market right now for a lender to even care so much about giving you the most because we know how the markets, we know how the economy is going. I follow all that. And so I know what industries are best to fund. I know why this one isn't going to work at this time. I'm already ahead of it too because I'm in these markets, in my own other projects that I have, in my network. And your network is your net worth. So choose your people, choose your funding people wisely. And not just, like I said, anybody who could just get you and throw you money. Who understands business development, creating businesses, has his own, have multiple, who really does care, has themselves in their discipline high, their standards, what they're willing to accept, energy and time efficiency in their process, and giving you the right knowledge and information to make the best decision. So sometimes then I see sales do grow, but even the costs go higher than the sales growth. Like right now with inflation and wages at the percentage that inflation has gone up, although a bit of it has like wavered, but that would soon then I'm seeing it come back up with interest rates going up. So that you have to face in an inflationary environment. Inflation outpacing wage growth. And so what you purchase, your purchasing power isn't getting you so far. So the de-dollarization, you have to look at that, look at where other opportunities and investments lie and what you have to do to recover and or push yourself forward in the right direction. Costs grow faster, labor, materials, insurance, fuel, marketing and advertising, inflation, like I mentioned, interest rates, revenue goes up, but profit then doesn't. More revenue doesn't always mean more profit. And are you increasing your operational margin, profit margin? Sometimes the business has inefficient systems. You might be having something that is outdated or new and current, but it just paused, or something happened. There's a delay, there's an infraction, something was not spotted fast enough. Now we have to do some rework. Systems down. Maybe the work is being repeated over and over, spending too much time on the type of work. It could be that inventory isn't managed well. What if it's scheduling, creating then those costs that are unnecessary? So funding doesn't normally and consistently fix inefficient operations and management. Better systems will come first. Therefore, then you have the right processes. And having an understanding on how to manage, having a CPA, an accountant, a bookkeeper, having the right people a part of your team so you understand what you're doing so you can focus on what matters most, which is your business. Unless you have a few people and then you're the one who's not in the day to day, or you do day to day, but you're also doing this. But you got to set aside some time too to learn it and not making excuses if that were the case. And that can only go so long. Sometimes there's actually isn't a financial roadmap. The owner knows they need money. I think we've all been there in thought, whether you've taken action on trying to go get funding or not. But like I was in the beginning, I didn't clearly define my way in asking more questions, more higher level questions, but simply something like how much, for what purposes does this serve, for how long, what return, rate of return, return on investment, additional gross, net, free cash flow, net free cash flow I plan to gain, and realistically for how long and how many months is it sustainable, or how they repay it. Those are the types of questions that do matter. Sometimes it could be a timing thing. Your business is growing, it's expanding, it's in scale mode, but the opportunity came before the business had enough cash reserves or before the business qualified for less expensive capital. And it's not always about getting the least and the cheapest and the fastest and the easiest capital. Sometimes you got to spend a little bit of energy and time while I'm figuring it out behind the scenes. Here's the way we go in the direction we handle this. Just timing is going to change everything in this. So, do you see what's happening? Funding isn't always the first answer, it's a progression of a first answer. It's a lot of the times better understanding the business you're in. And if you had to understand it more yourself, the history of it, the dynamics of it, the risk mitigation, all these topics, then it's just funding becomes one of those tools again in the toolbox to help solve the problem. Can't use a wrench to solve everything. Got the wrong socket. You need a smaller flat. That will help you get to the plumbing under the sink. And sometimes we have to go in there and try and say, oh, yeah, we need a different tool. Or it might have been, shit, I knew that. It could have been laziness. It could have been many reasons. So it's one of the biggest mindset shifts I hope you get to take away from all this that we continue moving forward. And it's a mindset, it's a strengthening of the mind in the growth as an individual. Organization leads into business, discipline leads into business. In all fundamentals, it's about growing oneself internally to be the best you can be in your business and show up the best that you can be outside of your business. Once you start uh, leaving the question of where can you get money and you begin to ask, what problem am I solving really? Your decision making process and getting funding becomes so much more smoother and easier. I'm a testament of that. So naturally, it leads us to think something more when we start asking these kind of questions. If funding isn't always the first problem, then what should a business owner like you and myself be measuring? So let's talk about one of the most misunderstood concepts in business, and that is cash flow. Okay. So as you see on your screen, we have revenue is not the same as cash flow. Business A, business B, I'll be breaking down more in detail here. You can see in the middle, I have cash flow, income, profit, operation, business, finance. So I want to show you something that completely changed how I looked at business. Most people are taught to ask one certain question. It's always been on my mind. How much revenue does the business make? You might have heard that if you went to go get funding or something along those lines. It's not even the first thing that I ask or try to understand. And I'm not even a salesperson. Like you heard my background, naturally even. So I don't approach things like that in asking you sales level questions or in a feeling dirty kind of way. It's just not that. And it's like the concept of not saying that it's always this way, but if you go to a salesperson versus someone who is not a salesperson, or you go to an automotive dealership, not saying that that's how it is and so much it is nowadays, but that's not who I am. So I have more of a care and nurture type way that I care about you as the individual, as the person, want to know you as the person. Oh, we were here. Oh, the funding. Yes. Uh, and then, yeah, can you please share with me a little bit about your business, what it does, what you do? Oh, nice. See, it's nothing unnatural. It's just who I am as the person. And having someone like that in your corner is someone that I wish I would have had from the very beginning when I first went through all this. It's hard to find that in this industry. In fact, I don't even trust over 99% of the people on my side because it's hard. And then how many of them actually learn a lot of what I've learned and done and applied than just getting into funding? Speaking to you about spewing you in terms of funding. So it's a standard and levels to this and having that higher discipline. I'm not saying you have to have it high, as high as me, but being there and I can help you grow. So underwriters almost never stop there. just to look at what your revenue is making in your business. What they would ask and what I would ask is how much of that revenue stays in your business. That's more deeper. Now I can start investigating and looking at it a little bit closer. Those are two different conversations. So when you see business A on the left right here, revenue, they're making 2 million. This company generates $2 million in annual revenue. If someone told you they owned a $2 million business, most people would probably be impressed. But it's something we have to slow down and look behind the surface. So I've seen a lot of businesses, $2 million a month, 4 million, 6 million. It's not about even how much the business is making, how much it keeps, how much you can keep putting back in. And in other places, it's not so much always about the business itself, on why it's even happening like this. What is it in the individual that you see or they have that is allowing them to do this in the business? Their gross profit, as you see here, 700,000, 35%. That means the business spent $1.3 million just delivering its product and or service, depending on what's bundled, what's added, low ticket, mid ticket, high ticket, residual income products. How is it built? Is it one product offering just split in different ways, but it achieves and ascends the person to the right same place at the end of it, just a lower subscription cost, same features and benefits or differences until they upgrade. There's so many different things. So just think about it. Before paying rent, before paying office staff, before paying insurance, before marketing and advertising, before the software, the systems, before taxes, and involving all that with actual true realized profits and revenue and more. So before debt, 1.3 million is already gone. This is one of the first things and places experienced business owners like myself, and it may be you who's watching this, and in time could get to this, we begin looking at. We don't celebrate revenue first. We ask what's left after we produce the work. Let's take it another step or level. Operating expenses consumed, another 650,000. For how long this business has been operating, let's just say another, quote unquote, another 650,000. Whether it was less at one stage and then it was the same the year before that, etc. That leaves only 50,000 in net profit. Think about what that really means. At that 2.5%, you might think, oh, well, that can't be so much of a drastic drop. You'd be surprised in what I've seen. But just for this example, let's say, because we want to go in the negative. So let's just say I could have brought it to a smaller 15 to 20% net profit, less than that, and then said, okay, we got to 2.5% from there. But I wanted to draw a much more illustrative, larger size example because we want to go large. And so net profit at 50,000, that's 2.5% of that. Think about it, what it really means. This business collected $2 million over an entire year, managed employees, solved their customer problems, employee problems, a lot to manage there and do, and how much each can come in and help open up an account or how much they handle, what they're doing. High value employees, hard to come by these days. People are not leaving positions because it's a low hire, low fire type of environment. So people are sticking more longer now, not because they enjoy what they are doing or what they want to do, because it's afraid of leaving that role, not having to pick up something because so many people are looking and not getting a position. So a lot of people have to take what they can get now, regardless of maybe where they were then, and they have a whole lot lesser role. So this business collected $2 million over an entire year, managed employees, solved customer problems, took on risk, paid vendors, and after everything, it kept only about 2.5 cents out of every dollar. To even bring it more down to its elemental phase, 2.5 cents out of every dollar. So that's not to say it's automatically like dissolve the company, bankrupt, and say this won't work. No, let's not start with that conversation. That's always one of the last ones, not the last one. So it's not automatically itself, quote unquote, bad. Some industries, they will naturally operate on thin margins. Not going to start naming so many of them, but I had it on mind when I said it earlier on 10, 20, 20 to 25% plus. And I know what businesses those are. Margins that run on 80%. How do we increase margin? What do we do with price, cost of goods? What do we do on our average order, our repeat customer base, our activation to retention rate? We got to look at all these different things and metrics to understand that, and giving value at the end of the day is taking value and giving it to someone. So I do know a lot of businesses operate on thin margins. Others can operate on 80%, 100%. Digital businesses, because the fulfillment cost is less to none when it comes to those digital products based business. Or you're in a high volume business, or you're in one that's low volume, could be higher margin, higher ticket, which is what you usually see. So there's processes to everything, and what you end up doing and how you should frame your business and how you should structure it and what should be where, what revenue streams, what should you put on the front end versus the mid and back end, and how should it flow. There's different frameworks of this, and every business is different on their business models and so much more. So you have grocery stores, distribution centers, distribution network locations, telecommunications. You have so many different types of businesses, distributors, as mentioned, and then you have some contractors as examples. But it does mean that the business has very little room for error. You see the net profit, you see the free cash flow at negative 40K, debt payments off the roof is what it looks like, 12,000 a month. And then an average cash reserve is 2 weeks. Can we say what debt prepayments, payments they are right now? We can say, hey, we have loans here, line of credit, too high cost. We want to refinance, consolidate. We want to do this with our auto loan. It could be an encompassing amount of things. We're focused on the business side and just looking at the debt schedule, 12,000. It's massive. High cost capital, high weighted average cost capital. A lot of the times that's what it is in multiple positions. Or it could be a large amount that someone got in, so it's such a large payment with monthly payments, trying to keep the rate as low, etc. But that's fairly large. So there's a few unexpected costs, expenses, a slower paying customer than there was one before, or just in general, they're all the same. Or there's a temporary slowdown. It could have been a shutdown in that time. That wasn't the right, had to, but it came at the wrong time. Can create real pressure. Now, notice something even more important. Free cash flow is, like I mentioned, negative. And it confuses a lot of business owners. They ask, how can I make a profit but still be short on cash? I'll tell you why. Its profit is an accounting measure. How you account for profit, super important. While the cash flow then reflects what is actually happening in the bank account. Maybe your customers, their customers, haven't paid yet. It could be inventory had to be purchased. The equipment payments then increased. More equipment gathered, more expensive equipment. Shouldn't have purchased when you should have leased. You didn't get as many units. You'd have to have so many units just to break even and then being a profit, just to be able to afford that equipment. Maybe it could be the taxes are due, overdue, extensions, wrong things on the tax returns, accounted for incorrectly. Maybe your business is growing faster than it can finance itself. That's how businesses go out, or they get acquired, mergers and acquisitions, pre-IPO, IPOs. You see a lot of right now in the market, and all these bondholders and where the stock market is, and it's holding up. So you're starting to see a lot of that and satisfying these bondholders, and a lot of companies issuing stock in replacement of other forms so they can preserve their assets for a much more longer time. There's more to that, but I won't get so much into that space right now. And it could also be with these loan payments, they're just out of hand. And coming back to that 12,000 a month is what it looks like. Or it could be stable. Revenue doesn't automatically become available cash flow. So always remember that it's not your cash flow, revenue itself. And there's more aspects to cash flow, but I want to keep moving. So I don't want to be spending so much time. And by the way, I'll add a shameless plug to this. I wasn't thinking of this, but I am the creator of the Cash Flow Mastery System workbook and a few others. So module by module, helping you build out your cash flow, giving you so much value and help there. That's something. So if you ever wanted that, you can reach out, or if I leave it in the description somewhere. Now, let's compare that with business B on the right. Revenue is only $600,000. It's much smaller than the 2 million we had on business A, but look at that deeper. Not because it has less revenue doesn't mean it is far less off than business A would be. Sure, the math makes sense at 300,000 at 50% higher gross profit margin than it is 35%. So operating expenses are well controlled in this case too, because you have 180,000 as opposed to 650,000 at a 15-point injunction of percentage difference from 50 to 35%. So a massive difference. And then the operating expenses. So if the gross profit on the left-hand side were higher, sure, much more doable, but then that increases still a lot of the operating expenses, or can keep them at bay, etc. So the business earns 120,000 in net profit. That is their 20%. So most importantly, it still generated positive free cash flow. It has money available after running the business. That is what creates options. They can invest, replace equipment, hire employees, build reserves, or qualify for stronger financing. And even then, it's like they're just taking it out of their own business and raising capital through a family office, through a separate stream. They're able to then reinvest and grow in more and even much faster, consolidate much faster, plan ahead easier and much faster in a lot of cases. Now, I want you to notice something that most people never do think about, even talk about. The business problems don't always begin with a lack of sales. Sometimes they do begin with cash flow leaks, cash quietly disappearing from places the owner yourself, happened to me so far ago, have fixed things, learned from mistakes. The owner isn't watching out for it. It could be that your inventory is sitting too long. It's old inventory. Receivables stretch from 30 to 60 days. Looking at that and why. Customers paying slower than vendors do require their payments. It could be that the subscriptions, the memberships, the subscriptions have then added up so much, accumulated over the many years. And that can happen even before over a year or two or plus. It could be your labor productivity has declined, slowed down. You need to relieve people. It's just not worth it, the production value, getting enough productivity. It could be maybe margins have compressed because prices haven't kept up with inflation. None of those problems are immediately obvious if you're just looking at the revenue, which a lot of business owners, they optimize for revenue. So much more deeper underneath it. That's why experienced operators, and like myself, maybe you or you're on your way to, and lenders, they dig deeper. We look farther beyond the surface. We look at what could happen. If this doesn't get paid back, what's the worst that could happen? And if you make your payments, great, everybody's happy. What can we do to help you get more funding? And does it make sense to get more additional funding and add-on funding and or refinance, or not the time yet, and it's better to do something else? So let me ask you this question again. Which business is financially healthier? For me, it's obvious. The side isn't really about choosing business A or business B, though. It's about changing the question you're asking. That's why I'm showing you all this. It's critical thinking behind it. Instead of asking yourself and that of others, how much revenue does this business generate? You should start asking, how much cash does this business actually keep? Make is one thing, but keep. Because business alone will not survive on revenue. You'll survive off of cash flow. And here's another question I almost ask and encounter a lot of the times with business owners. Let's say we were to approve your funding. What would you realistically expect that investment for you to produce? ROI, and there's more questions that I would ask under that. And it's not just revenue. How much in additional gross profit is there to be made for how long? Realistically, what would make it that? How much in additional net profit? More importantly than this is how much in additional free cash flow, net free cash flow, discounted cash flows. There's investment, financial cash flows, contribution margin. There's different formats. Over what period of time? Is it 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, more or less? Because sustainable, incremental, not always so quick and like large, because you'll figure things along the way, especially in a startup. You don't always have that much cash to put in, but you have to accelerate the results in cases. So sometimes you do jump over things when you should have been looking at it from layers. And when you start asking yourself, why did this happen? In reverse engineering, why would this happen? Why would that have happened? Why would this happen? Before it even did, you'll get to the core problem of it and solve that. So sustainable, incremental, unless it's you're going to put something out there to get the fastest results, you can come back and data measure and then improve and do what you needed to do, specs, a lot of things. Okay. But that improvement is what we're looking for, not temporary improvement. Revenue is creating your opportunity. Your cash flow then creates your stability. And what does stability do? It's going to create options, as we've been speaking. And there's that word, option and options. That's one of the biggest things and shifts I wanted you to know and take away from this and what we're going through. So now that we've seen the difference between revenue and cash flow, let's go one step deeper, because this may be one of the most important concepts in business. Revenue doesn't actually pay for your bills. Cash does. You can see on the left and on the right, I'll go into. So imagine you're a contractor. On the left-hand side, we have a customer with a job completed. You completed a $100,000 project. We're just keeping it at 100,000 round number. Isn't it exciting? Woo! You send the invoice, but your customer pays to what the contract was listed at. Nothing less, nothing more. 45 days later, as you see there on your screen, does that mean the business doesn't have expenses for 45 days? Of course not. Customer pays, but what's going on and how much more additional capital are you taking out? What are you borrowing versus not borrowing? What are those expenses and why are they adding up? Overhead and expenses, fixed variable costs. Something else got disrupted. There's so much more to account for. So payroll still comes every week. Fuel has to be purchased. Materials were probably purchased before the job even started. How much of that was front loaded too? You have insurance premiums. And right now, that's a whole other subject. Insurance premiums, homeowners insurance, property taxes, all this stuff. Healthcare insurance, all types of insurance. A lot of configuration with premiums and things that need to be added into that haven't yet and only going up. Healthcare, all so much. It's a whole nother topic. Equipment payments will continue. Your rent continues, mortgage, loan payments still continue. Everything just keeps moving up. So this is where many healthy businesses begin feeling pressure. Not because they are losing money, it's because the cash is moving at different speeds. So this is why I believe cash flow deserves far more attention than it usually gets and receives. So let's walk through a few concepts. So as we went over, meanwhile, payroll and everything that's happening with rent and more. So revenue doesn't pay the bills, cash does. So with operating cash flow, as you see on the right, it's simply the cash you generate from the normal day-to-day operations of your businesses. It's not the financing, it's not investments, it's what the actual business produces in terms of cash. If your operating cash flow is consistently low, weak, or it happened right away but a large amount, that's something I'd immediately want to understand. Why did it happen so fast? It could be an internal thing. Why didn't that person upkeep what they had to do? Well, because Why didn't they? Because of that. So you go deeper. In working capital, it's your short-term ability to pay short-term obligations. Think of it as breathing room. It helps determine whether your business can comfortably operate while waiting for money to come in. Each one of these, I can spend a lot of time, but we're going to try to go through this. Just want you to get a good amount of info on each, but I can spend a lot of hours each one of these over the many years of what I've done. It helps just determine whether your business can comfortably then operate while waiting then for the money to stack up and come in. Then you have liquidity to also think about. It just quickly answers if something unexpectedly happened today, tomorrow, how quickly can this business access cash? Because we know right now a lot of businesses are suffering. There have been those that are up, those that are not. That, oh, every day I come into the office or you come in, oh, what's the next thing that has to change? What's the next thing that added cost, tariffs, trade deficits? What's going on now? New tariffs, we got to get ahead of it. So we got to buy now before. We got to buy this much. What are we actually buying? Maybe it's from checking, savings, a line of credit, which helps hold over. And that's why lines of credit are useful. You should usually have those when you don't need the money the most, when you should have one. And covering those spots and holding you over, but not doing and taking advantage of it too much that holds you over for so long that you can't pay that. Marketable assets do you have? Liquidity creates your flexibility and versatility. And then again, as we come back to having more flexibility and versatility gives you options. Cash reserves. Then we have cash reserves. I love asking business owners, and I always ask myself of this too, is if your revenue had completely stopped, paused today, how many months could your business continue to operate? How much longer can it continue operating as it is? It tells me a lot. It tells me your weak points, tells me how to strategize, and understanding what your reserves are now versus what they could be, what they were in the past, why now, and then in the future. So strong reserves will reduce your stress and deficits. So it allows you to make better decisions, not hastily, instead of making desperate ones and on the spurt, ones that you haven't made before either. With timing, then there's that. It's one of the most overlooked parts of cash flow. You might eventually receive every dollar you've owed, but if payroll, again, like I said before, it's due on every Friday and your customer pays you next month, the timing suddenly becomes everything because, oh, that's my one most dependent customer. And somebody didn't get paid, we didn't get paid. It's that cycle that becomes very vicious. You become so dependent. So then now you have, and that's something that we look at, like when I'm looking at investment projects, is like how concentrated is the revenue in customers and average order of customers to purchase this versus that, and how we should price this and how we should be from start to finish the experience and all this. And like the sides of a restaurant that usually make up the most margin and do the actual protein, large size meat. But if you get the protein, you have to get the size, at least select 2, 3 of your choice out of the 5. There you go. You made your margin on it. You made your profit on it. Had a little bit of a loss leader up front or hit break even. Cost per acquisition is higher, yet we can make more though. And from the back end, there's just a lot of different ways to look at it. So then you have your cash conversion cycle, which is our last one here. It's one of my favorite concepts, not to go so deep into it right now, but the cash conversion cycle, it's measuring how long your cash gets tied up before it returns into your business. So thinking inflows and outflows. How long does your inventory sit? How quickly do customers pay you? How long do suppliers give you before your payment is then due? Think about vendors too. Businesses that have a shortened cycle, they will improve their cash flow without increasing their sales. So think about that in your business, what you could add if you don't have, or if there is an opportunity to, if it's not the right time or the model, but what else do you have to make up for if you don't have that? That's why people look for capital that's longer term because of the working capital, and they don't use it all to make an immediate 2 times, 3 times the amount of what the costs are, even if it's higher cost capital for an opportunity. They have lag time and timeline gaps in their capital and their working capital, their operations, where they don't get enough cash flow. It's on small margins. It's enough, but it goes out quickly. So I can't yet sustain my business. I cannot have extra reserves of cash flow. So I put in other opportunities. How do we continue to grow this business if we don't have more cash flow opportunities? Not just what we have, but what we can create. So It's one reason I don't just recommend funding when someone tells me they're short on cash. My first thing is why? Why is your cash leaving too fast? Are customers paying too slow? Are your margins too thin? Is your inventory just sitting too long? There's more things to ask in each one of these that I would give you and go over. Are your expenses just increasing? Maybe you just don't spot a few things, or they're quietly increasing or too fast. Is your debt consuming too much of your monthly cash? Is it a daily or a weekly issue, more bi-weekly issue, more than a monthly, or which one? If we identify what that real issue, cause to effect, sometimes your business doesn't need more funding. It just needs better cash flow management and a better structuring infrastructure. When you're building the home, the foundation is being put. Nice. Here's the dirt. You have the foundation. Here's what it's sat on. Here's the structure we have and how it'll be built. The inside, to the kitchen, to the ceiling, to the tiling, insulation, steps to this that have to be done. And a lot of the time, sometimes it just needs more of the two, or the same of the two, with more funding and more cash flow management, or equal just funding and cash flow management. Something that I've learned over the many years, not only in my own businesses, but helping people in theirs, not just with funding, with and without it, is I see businesses that rarely do fail because they run out of revenue, which is the first thing. It's not the first thing. They usually fail because they ran out of cash, existing cash, and new incoming cash too, from revenue, being able to help and support that. Revenue is important, but profit is important too. Cash flow is what allows a business, though, to continue operating long enough to benefit from both of those. Again, your revenue, your profit, both are important. Don't want to always say equally, but your cash flow is what allows a business and your business to continue operating long enough, long term, to benefit from both. So now that we talked about cash flow, let's look at something that quietly destroys it. Earlier, just now, we just talked about cash flow. Now I want to go over something that quietly just plummets it, destroys it, delays it, but mostly destroys it. And the reason I use the word quietly too, it's because these problems usually they don't happen right away or overnight. They were happening little by little. It's kind of like you're breaking the brick or a wall, and it wasn't the last one, it was the one all before it that came breaking it down in a good or bad way, whatever you're building up or tearing down, breaking down, replacing or moving somewhere else. So they happen little by little, month after month. They keep creeping. Like if you remember, if you ever have, when I was younger, kid would tippy toe into the kitchen when I want to make noise and microwave. Until one day, then you, the owner, someone else that's an owner in your business, myself as an owner, we ask, where does the money all go? It's almost like asking, well, I'm making enough, but where does the money all go? It goes out before I can keep enough of it. Let's look at some of the biggest cash flow leaks that I see. One of these is pricing. You have inventory, expenses, slow collections, margin compression, debt payments. And I know the end is covered there, so I apologize. So you have margin compression. I was going to say market compression. You can say that too. Product market fit. Where's the market going? So the first thing I notice is pricing. This is one of the hardest things to have a discussion or conversation with an owner in email, not even in a call, like email too, text messages, messenger, etc. Many businesses are busy, really busy. Phones are off the hook. They're ringing. Hey, employees are working. The environment is up. Customers are coming in online and or offline. Revenue is increasing, but being busy doesn't automatically mean you're in profit or you're profitable. Sometimes your business just isn't changing enough. Costs increase, your wages then increase, your insurance increases, materials increase. And insurance, that means like if you're in the transportation trucking space, like insurance cover how many drivers per vehicle premium high is like a lot of cost. So you have insurance increasing, material increasing, your fuel increases, but your prices just stay the same, or your price if it's one core leading product. Every job completed you have, slowly it just becomes less profitable. Then eventually your cash flow begins to shrink, decompresses, debilitates, it's shrunk, damaged. Not because your sales had disappeared necessarily, it's because your margins had. So next we have this inventory. In each one of these, I can spend a lot of time on. Again, everything you're seeing before, you've seen before, and you're seeing now and going forward, speak a lot about, but want to keep it moving for you. And I hope this is very valuable. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns at any point, you can reach out. There's a place underneath the video to leave a comment. Please do. So inventory is interesting because it feels like it's an asset, and it is. When you look at assets and liabilities, you look at balance sheets, profit and loss, you look at why numbers are the way they are. But until it's sold, it's also cash that's no longer sitting in your bank account. There's always that, like with account receivables and all this kind of stuff that's going on. Too much inventory, slow moving inventory, obsolete inventory, overstocking, all of these are creeping up quietly and they're tying up your working capital. So what you could ask yourself is, if you walk through your warehouse or where your inventory is, it doesn't have to be a warehouse, it could be like a little, I remember when I was in the courier space, administrative dispatch, I was also doing the phones. There were phones in the back, and I was giving them, handing them off, and when they're there, and accounting for and all that. So if you walk through your warehouse today, how much of what's sitting there hasn't moved in 6 months? And also, it's something that I was doing in the financial logistics space with a lot of the media and inventory and another 9-to-5s that I was in a long time ago. So how much of what's sitting there hasn't moved in 6 months? That's cash. It could be, it doesn't have to be 6 months always, but that's cash. So then we have expenses. And these expenses you so often see are reoccurring and recurring. You have software subscriptions, memberships, advertising that's no longer producing your results. You don't know if you're getting the funding to fund an existing customer base that you can get more of those same customers, or it's a new clientele, for what reasons. Services you forgot you were paying for, it's happened to me. Storage, equipment leases, vendors, individually, none of them seem like much, but together they quietly reduce your versatility and flexibility. I remember that when I was paying for things, I'm like, how did I get that app? I didn't even need it. It was like an entertainment use. Then other things for CRMs here and there, and then I had to consolidate and lower what I didn't need. It's a big difference when you look at your statements. You look at how much you need to keep set aside for what you need in your own life and more. So I encourage you and other owners to at least once a year review, audit every recurring payment. Review it after every week, after every day if you could. Maybe a little extreme, but after every week, after every couple of weeks, every month, every quarter, looking at it, depending on your business you run and how you should be looking at your numbers. And if I were starting my business all over and I was starting something today, would I still choose to spend money on this? If the answer is no to you, it deserves to have another look. Might not be the right model you want to do in business. And I have business models that I have online, others. So if you wanted help in building an online digital business yourself, I can show you. I have my own products, others that I've been an affiliate for, things that I can show you in the digital space. I've done it in the physical product space and the digital space too. And there's more that I have going on. So I can show you different ways. And I've had a lot of business owners who don't want to keep doing what they're doing or change their mind because something else out there is likely a lot better and having more freedom, growth, wealth, and those things, and surrounding yourself around people that are around that. So collections. You can make a sale today, but if your customer pays you in 60 days, while you pay your vendors in 15 days, guess who's financing that gap? You are. So improving collections doesn't mean and require making another sale. It's sometimes simply a tightening in invoices, having your invoices changed, or what you can accept, what vendors, suppliers are able to accept. So following up sooner, hey, we'll give you an incentive, buy down rate or something like this to acquire that property, or hey, we want to get this property off the market as quick as we can. Oh, hey, we want our customers to pay us like this, so we're going to reward them with this. We're going to incentivize. We're going to give them bonuses if they act quickly. We have this opened up for the first 5 action takers, and we thought of you. We had you in mind. We personally reached out to you. Boom, there you go. There's so many different angles. There's much more than that. So following up sooner, offering convenient payment methods, or billing more quickly and doing buy now, pay later, stretching that out. Low, no down, etc. So shortening the time it takes to collect cash on strengthening cash flow, or it's already cash that's already been strengthened without increasing your revenue. So different ways of increasing the cash flow without adding additional revenue. And then you have margin compression. Imagine with this, it's another leak that's easy to miss. That's easy to imagine. Now imagine that your cost increased by 8% over 2 years. We're not saying just 8% over 1 year. And 8% is something somebody would take if they were doing an investment and getting equity and like, oh, well, 8 to 12% doesn't sound so bad. And I'm getting returns of, and my rate of return is, or I'm doing trades at a weekly, how much? Okay, and this is how much it adds up monthly. Well, it makes sense for me to do this. But your price is only increased by 2%. Revenue might continue growing, but every sale produces less profit than it used to. That's why I encourage you and business owners to periodically, again, review pricing, vendor costs, and profitability by product or service, product and or service, not just in total revenue. Then you have debt payments, which is our last one here on the left. Debt isn't automatically bad. Like I've said before, you use it for the right reasons. There's good and bad debt. Also ask yourself, is this investment going to reduce my costs? Is it going to increase my production capacity, improve turnover times, reduce rework, fixes, bugs, improve then collections, improve margins, and open additional capacity, as I mentioned just a second ago. Sometimes your best investment doesn't increase your revenue at all. What it does, it's allowing your business to keep more of what it already earns in retention instead of increasing your revenue or adding another revenue stream. So that can be just as valuable, if not more valuable, because you also learn a lot through that process and what you're doing in management. So in fact, a lot of this used strategically, it can help your business grow. But every time a monthly payment comes in, it's reducing your future flexibility and your versatility. So what is the debt helping the business accomplish? I ask myself that for myself. I ask that for others and seeing what that actually is. And is it producing additional revenue? Is it increasing efficiency? Is it reducing cost? Or is it simply covering your losses? It's a combination of them, but these answers do matter. So you have to sit down and ask yourself, almost like a Venn diagram. What's in the middle? What's on the left? What's on the right? Brainstorming. So one thing I want you to notice that none of these leaks usually happen at one time, all at once. They're small, they accumulate. That's why I compare them to a leak in a boat. One small leak may not seem urgent. You might have to put some tape in between it. In the meantime, it's what you have to use or you can afford to use. That's not going to fix it long term, and it can leak something very quickly. So you need to put something inside to seal it. But if it's ignored long enough, it eventually affects everything. And something so large, and there's such a small leak, could lead into more leaks, larger leaks. Not always the biggest one at once. But if it's ignored again long enough, it's going to affect everything in that boat. The kitchen, it's going to affect rudder, everything inside of it. Where you sleep, if you have room for that, you're fishing from on the side, etc. Better cash flow isn't always created by just selling more. So sometimes you create it by creating more of what you already earn. So again, not that you always have to increase more revenue. And as you see on the side here, we have, are you charging enough? As like we went over a bit in a different way. Is your cash sitting on the shelves? What are you paying for every month that no longer creates value? How long does it take to have customers pay you? Have your costs increase faster than your prices? How much monthly cash leaves before you pay yourself? And there's more to ask, but I'll leave it there. So it's one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the years when it comes to doing more with what you already have and doing more of that if it's already working. Or do you have to completely pivot or do a small pivot? Revenue grows businesses, but managing your cash flow keeps them alive in your business up and running. long enough to enjoy that growth and reap the earnings of it. Before we go on to the next slide, I would love to ask you something. Has anything we've covered so far up to this point changed the way you think about your own businesses, the type of business you want to get in? Or has it already raised the question? If it has, don't wait until the end to answer, comment. You can say so now if you'd like to, down below. There's room there and where you're watching it from. Leave your thoughts or questions in the comments below while they're right now on top of your mind. They're fresh on your mind. So I genuinely enjoy going through them and reading them and doing my best to respond as soon as I can. And they'll help me know what future workshops, information would be most valuable for you in this community. Okay. So let's keep it going. So now that we've talked about the hidden leaks, the next question then is, if a business does need capital, how do you know which funding solution actually fits the problem? That's where we're going to go with this next. So up until now, we've been looking at your business through your eyes and a different lens too. Now, I want you to look at your business through someone else's, the underwriter. You see in the center here, I have underwriter. Above it, cash flow, because that's where is the center of everything. Everything you can see is pointing into underwriter. And we're leveled underwriter with credit. We could level underwriter with industry too, and everything that falls underneath it, kind of like a ladder and things that are underneath underwriter. But you have collateral, business stability, existing debt management, liquidity, using funds, use of funds, industry, and again, cash flow. And then in the middle center is underwriter. You put lender there and underneath it, or even in larger, but underwriter. Most business owners think underwriting is some mysterious thing. I'm telling you, I've understood underwriting for a long time. I could just be an underwriter. That's my personality and character. I'm in my head all day. I do like 4 to 5 hours of reviews in my morning, most of it making up pre-underwriting, but I could go do that because I understand how it goes for a lot of different services. But for the opportunity cost and to run my own things, not being underneath someone else's in-house and always when they need me like that, because there's an opportunity cost of doing things. But I still love a lot of the back end work. So it's not this mysterious thing. It really isn't. Underwriters just ask one thing. Based on everything we know, and that means everything, reviews and so much more, so you can come even up with this conclusion. What is the probability that this money does come back to us? You could even ask, what's the probability that it wouldn't come back, and what happens when it doesn't come back? What will they owe us? That's it. Everything they review helps answer that one question. And they're a lot of protecting the downfall, not like equity on the upper end with the valuation and the realized returns, profits would be, and could it sustain that in shares? And are they going to issue new shares and stock buybacks coming back into the market? A lot of this stuff you're starting to see a lot right now because of liquidity and mergers and acquisitions, pre-IPO and post-IPO, in an IPO, I should say. So everything they review helps answer that one question. So let's start with credit on the left. Credit isn't simply a score, it's a behavioral pattern. It tells a story. Do obligations generally get paid? How much existing debt already exists? Are your balances increasing? What are your balances to limits ratio? Are there recent late payments? How recent? How many new accounts have been opened recently in the last 6, 12 months plus? How many inquiries? Types of debt? Revolving credit, installment, etc. Credit helps answer one thing. How has this borrower, you, managed debt in the past? And the three things you may have heard if you've seen me before is credit, cash flow, collateral. Those are the 3 C's of capital. You either get funding through credit, mostly, cash flow, where credit isn't so much of a thing, and in credit, cash flow, revenue isn't so much of a thing, or collateral, where credit and cash flow, but you're looking at like account receivables, real estate equipment, etc. Sometimes credit is impacted and added into it, but not so much of a heavy factor. You have liquidity, equity, you have other formats, but just wanted to mention that. So then you have cash flow at the top. Probably it is my favorite. I'd say probably it is. Cash flow, revenue is important, but underwriters know something. Loan payments aren't made with revenue, they're made with available cash. So they begin asking, are deposits consistent? I'm asking. There's more to ask with just deposits are consistent. Does your business experience seasonality? Is cash growing? shrinking? Is it stable? Are there enough funds available after normal operating expenses to comfortably support another payment? This is why cash flow often creates much more weight than people do realize. And it's super important to understand these things, that when we're looking at it from an underwriter's point of view on what needs to be underwritten, because it depends on the service, junior, senior underwriting, and understanding like bank statement analysis versus tax returns and a combination of them, reading 3 to 4 months of bank statements, etc. Revenue trends, what are the average monthly deposits, types of deposits, growth or decline in revenue, are the seasonal fluctuations, like I was mentioning, daily balances, average daily balances, consistent positive or non-positive balances, frequency of low balances, non-sufficient funds, returned items, overdrafts, existing debt obligations, other types of payments that are similar to the service you'd like to get, loan payments, ACH withdrawals, transfers, depositing consistency. What are the regular business deposits versus irregular? And is it regular? What's the customer payment patterns? How they pay you? What are you doing to pay others, if so? So all of that is super important, and it weighs into the decision-making process when it comes to this. And that's why cash flow often carries much more weight than people do realize. So are there enough funds after all of this to support another payment? Next, we have on your screen industry on the far right in that off pinkish, peachish type color. Is not all industries do have the same behavioral patterns. They behave the same. They don't always. Construction, restaurants, medical practices, software companies, transportation, retail, all of these which I've helped, and many others I haven't even mentioned yet. Every industry has different risk characteristics. Some experience seasonality, others will collect invoices slowly. It could be higher failure rates. Some require much larger equipment purchases or just larger equipment purchases in general. So the underwriter, they want to understand the environment of that and the business in which it operates and what's the environment it operates in. Not to judge it itself and judge a book by its cover, but to evaluate and analyze how it affects repayment risk. So then comes collateral. We go back to the left. But not every loan requires collateral, but when it exists, it can reduce lenders' risk. So there's unsecured versus secured. It depends on what you can do, what you want to do, etc. Real estate, equipment, accounts receivable, inventory, other business assets. We have land and more. Collateral doesn't automatically make a weak business stronger, but it can strengthen an already solid request and it can streamline things much faster. Then you have character. One factor people often overlook is character. Does the borrower yourself communicate honestly? Are you organized? Do you understand your own business? Can you clearly explain why they need the money or you need the money? Character is difficult to measure with numbers alone, but experienced lenders pay attention to it. Underwriters, myself, I pay attention to that closely. You have use of funds. This is one of my favorite things. And what will your money be used for? That's generally the first thing that's asked. And then I would ask why this amount. And I would ask it in different ways or in different orders too, depending on things, circumstances. Why now? Why is this investment expected to work? How will success be measured? What return is the business expecting? How much additional gross profit? How much an additional net profit? How much additional free cash flow? An underwriter doesn't simply just look at evaluating a borrower or borrowers. They're evaluating the investments and where they're going. And just notice that I didn't ask you or didn't say, how much do you want? I asked, what are you trying to accomplish? Again, if we looked at every 100,000 or just at 100,000 to start for equipment that increases production, it's very different than from somebody who gets 100,000 simply to cover ongoing costs. It's the purpose behind the funding often matters as much as the amount. Liquidity you have right here. It answers another important thing. If something happened unexpectedly next month, does your business have enough available cash to continue operating? Stronger liquidity or strong liquidity in general gives businesses time to adapt, time to then recover, receive, time to make better optimized decisions. and just better decisions in general if you're not optimizing. Then you have business stability on the left, bottom left here in the green color. With stability, how long has your business been operating? And there's more to ask for stability. So you have, our revenue and revenue streams relatively consistent? Are they working well? Are they manageable? Are customers concentrated? Or are they diversified? Is the ownership stable? Who's owning the business? Who owns the business? Has this business demonstrated resilience through changing economic conditions, markets? Have they gone through things? Stability doesn't guarantee you have success, but it does increase the lenders and underwriters' confidence. It increases my confidence. And then you have debt, finally. Businesses don't borrow in isolation. When you have existing debt, the business does not borrow again in isolation. What an underwriter tends to ask is what obligations are already there and exist before we give you anything. What are the monthly payments? How much flexibility is remaining after being given this or before? And or can your business comfortably support another payment without creating unnecessary pressure? And sometimes that answer is yes. Sometimes the better thing is to strengthen your cash flow before adding more debt. So I hope you're beginning to notice something. Underwriting is not about, finding one reason to say yes or no. It's for you to put together thousands of smaller pieces together, like a puzzle piece, or you have like 4 different puzzle pieces, playing a board game strategically, playing chess, checkers, pieces of information to understand that overall picture, how it'll look like. One thing I'd also like for you to remember, it's this: not every lender evaluates your businesses exactly the same way and for the service. A traditional bank, an SBA loan lender, an equipment financing company, a revenue-based, cash flow-based lender, a commercial real estate, residential real estate lender, ground-up construction lender, land loan lender, a private lender, and even an equity investor, and there's so much more, may all emphasize their different parts of the business and what they have most consideration for. Some place more weight on your credit history. Others focus their heaviness on cash flow. Like I said, credit, cash flow, collateral. Others may look at primarily collateral. Again, credit, cash flow, collateral. Others spend more time evaluating the quality of the real estate, equipment, management team, or investment opportunity in itself. So the specific underwriting process changes depending on could be an underwriter, it could be a lender, it could be just the whole funding solution. And many of them are congruent, but things can vary. The goal and your outcome, your objective should always remain the same, or unless it changes throughout. And I mean, that in yours and then theirs from this point of view, since we're on the underwriter, they're trying to understand your overall level of risk and whether the opportunity makes financial sense for everyone involved. That's why I always encourage business owners to think beyond approval, but build the kind of business that becomes easier to finance over time. And we can layer different strategies and different funding options, long-term strategic roadmap, and more. Because when your fundamentals then improve, you're getting better funding options and opportunities. Those will follow. Now that you understand how lenders evaluate businesses, let's look at the different types of funding, and more importantly, when each one actually makes sense. So I have here the business funding readiness framework. We've talked about how businesses think. We've talked about the cash flow, about how lenders think. So now I'd like to simply bring things together, everything. So over the years, I've realized something very out there. Businesses that consistently obtain and get better financing, don't usually have a better credit. They've built stronger businesses to outlast that. So even if there's something with the credit, something else they can do and make up for. That's why I eventually then stopped thinking in terms of individual loan products myself, especially in the beginning, and started thinking in terms of what readiness is and what it means and what it could do. So this framework and things that I'm showing you are the result. And in first, let me come back to. So in your business foundation, we have step 1. There's the roadmap, your path to getting the funding ready, the little rocket ship On the right, step one, step two, step three, step four, step five, step six, a path, a roadway. And with business fund foundation, everything starts there. Before we ever talk about funding, I want to understand the business itself. I want to understand you better. Is your entity set up correctly? Does it have proper licensing and licenses? Is bookkeeping reasonably organized? Are there IPs, trademarks, patents, contracts, more? So again, is bookkeeping reasonably expected to be organized? Is there a dedicated business bank account, more than one? Does the business actually have a clear value proposition? What makes it stand out? Personal, business branding, and more. Mission, values, purpose, and more. Who is your customer, customers? How does your business make money? Those might sound basic, and I go deeper into these, so just surface level. But weaker and weak foundations, they create bigger problems later. Just like a house. The stronger your foundation, like I said before, the stronger everything is built on top of it. So then you have number two, financial foundation. Next comes the financial foundation. It's where I spend a lot of my time. I'm looking at cash flow, profitability, gross margins, net margins, debt obligations, liquidity, bank statement trends, your tax returns, financial statements. One question that keeps running through my mind when I'm doing a lot of this and before is your business financially then healthy to is it healthy enough to support additional capital? Because funding should strengthen your business, not become another burden and struggles to carry. Give me one moment. I have family visiting, the key to the home. So send them a quick text. It was very important that I had sent them a text. Okay, so we were getting into your funding readiness. So we had completed on step one, business foundation, step two, financial foundation. Now we're halfway there with funding readiness. So what I want to say is once your business and financial foundation are stronger, now we can ask a different type question. Is your business are already ready to apply? Is your credit where it should be? Are the financial documents already organized in place? Can you get them out of a folder? I always encourage you to keep them somewhere like in a Dropbox drive or on your computer. You can just quickly send. It's in an access code. I've seen all forms of ways you can send things, and there's differences and what you feel most comfortable with. I want to make sure you are most comfortable when you're going through the process too. And also, it has to make sense. What's best, efficient, energy and time saving, etc. So, are they there? Is your use of funds, are they clearly defined, like specifically, not just saying expansion? Because when you give me the exact in numbers too would be helpful and encouraged. It's like, oh, this would be this. Here's what I would recommend. Timeline gaps. This is going to be the right service. Da, 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 da. Maybe I ask something more and I follow up with an email, etc. So those things happen and they matter. Is your management prepared to understand underwriting questions? Sometimes improving your readiness for just a few months can completely change the entire financing options that are available. So then number four, choosing the right capital. Now and only now do we think about and start talking more about the funding products and segments. Notice how funding is in step one. It's step four. Why is this? Because the same business could qualify for several different financial products or different other services. Or which way do we start? Oh, we figured out why. Here's the actual problem. This is what we needed to do. So it's not just to get approved. It's to choose a type of capital that best matches your business's needs, repayment ability, threshold, timeline, and your growth strategy. That's very different than just asking who's advertising the fastest funding today and accepting anyone and everyone with a pulse. An email came in, it was convenient for me. I've heard those before. And I got funding here, but now I'm going to need you for this. Well, I thought you knew me before, and okay, something else was much more convincing. But what most business owners, I would say, not entrepreneurs, and there are entrepreneurs who don't look at this too, but there are levels when you go from business owner to entrepreneur. It's like you look at a lot of character, you look at a lot of things, and you value your time and energy differently, energy and time. It's not so much about how much more you can make, it's how much more time and energy you can save and preserve. You can create. It doesn't have to be a direct relation to the business. So it's about understanding who that person is, and it goes deeper than just accepting anything and everything in those standards. And again, it comes back to wishing I would have had somebody in the beginning who knew a lot more than just funding, business development, strategizing. That wasn't there. I'm pretty sure it still isn't. It's a very selective few, and in doing what I'm doing in this space and encompassing different aspects, niches, skills, higher level skill sets. And it's up here. Now, yes, I'm very tired, but I want to keep going and helping you, giving you value. So I can take a massive break and not think about doing a video again. And I wouldn't be doing any of this if I didn't do my focus work in the beginning of the day, my mental work. And so it's understanding that. And so deploying capital strategically, we have step 5. Receiving funding is not the finish line. It's actually the beginning. Every dollar borrowed should have a purpose. I encourage business owners to ask themselves, what measurable outcome am I expecting from this capital? Will it increase production? There we go again with that. Would it improve efficiency? Generates additional gross net profit? Additional in an increase of free cash flow? Does it reduce expenses? What expenses? How much? Percentage? Does it open a new revenue stream? If we can't clearly explain how the capital creates value, we probably need another conversation or discussion before borrowing. And then we come to the last one. Step 6, becoming more bankable. Finally, this is like one of my favorites, is not my favorite. It's becoming more bankable. If you're not there yet, but you have a path and you want to get there, even if you don't take a funding from them, like what do we got to do? Or we got to work backwards from becoming you're already bankable to doing what's the alternative? Reverse engineering. So this isn't about one loan. It's about becoming the kind of business and person that lenders want to finance again and again. Better cash flow, better financial reporting structure, stronger liquidity, and then rebounding if you don't have that access to liquidity. Lower unnecessary type debt, healthier reserves, you have better planning, you have better decision making. That's where long-term opportunities begin and they come to you. You don't always go out seeking them. So eventually, that's where the discussions and the conversation becomes different and it changes. So instead of your ask is, can I qualify? You begin to ask, which options make the most sense for me in my business? Like, oh, they're out there. I just want to know what's there, but I want to act on it now. And now I'm ready to act on it. So this framework has changed the way I think about business funding because funding stopped becoming the goal, the objective, always the outcome. Building a healthier business became the goal, the foundation, remember, of the home. And something interesting tends to happen when you do that. Healthier businesses, they often have access to healthier financing and options. Everything else we're about to discuss fits somewhere inside this framework. So now that you understand the framework, let's walk you through the different funding solutions available and more importantly, when each one actually makes sense. So you see here, don't chase funding, but build a business that's easy to fund. And then we have the arrow. It's time to go to the next slide. So choosing the right funding for the right situation. There are many different types of funding solutions. I listed a whole bunch of them here. I can say there are so many more ways in getting creative and adding funding solutions on top of one another or removing one, or this we should start off with first and then move in here before we get funding and then after. So we talked about cash flow. We talked about becoming funding ready. We've talked about how underwriters evaluate businesses. Now let's finally talk about the funding in itself. One of the biggest mistakes I see that people start by asking is, what's the best loan or what is the lowest rate? What can fund me the fastest? What is the cheapest cost? How much does it cost? I rarely start there. And you can see here business need and potential funding solutions, which we'll go over. So I rarely start with those. I start with a completely different question. What is the business really, actually, again, trying to accomplish? This is what I said before. What is the business trying to accomplish? There's more ways I can ask that and as a derivative. Because once we understand the business need and needs, wants, desires, problems, questions, roadblocks, obstacles, the appropriate funding options become more available and easier to identify. Not always so available at the beginning, but they become easier to at least identify. So funding isn't one of the products. It's not just one product. It's an entire toolbox again. Your wrench, your screwdriver, your Phillips, all of these and what you're doing. When you go to mow the grass, make sure you have the gas in there, the oil. I always check every time, even if I know there's enough of it. Always checking. It's a habit. It's a keep it muscle memory. Do it so you don't forget to do it next time when you absolutely need to. And just like you wouldn't use the same tool for everything in your construction, your manufacturing business project, whatever it is, whatever you're doing, your DIY, you brought something home and it's like much more complicated than something else. So many things put together in piece may not be complicated, maybe just complex. And complex can be complicated too. You shouldn't use the same financing solution for every business situation. So it's about being careful and selective. And sometimes you're not selective and have options. So you got to start somewhere. So let's start with improving day to day cash flow. Let's start with that. This is one of the most common reasons businesses seek financing. Maybe your customer's paying 45 or 60 days or so, but your payroll is every week. Your rent is due every week. Insurance premiums don't wait for that. Vendors want payments. They're not going to wait so long. Your fuel has to be purchased. Your cash is leaving before it comes back. In situations like these, a business line of credit often makes sense because it provides you with the versatility and flexibility rather than forcing you into a product that's a lump sum all at once. It could be a higher cost lump sum or even a lower cost, but it's not what you needed to use. Lump sums for larger purchases, one-time purchases, or ongoing purchases, or to cover gaps when you needed to have it there. But it's to make you that growth, that expansion level phase where you're going to get that additional ROI or you're growing. You really need a second location, third, or whatever you're doing and adding and amplifying. And there's other scenarios for that too and reasons. So depending on the business, a bank term loan or another working capital solution may also be appropriate. As you see there, bank term loan, there are general term loan lenders too, FDIC bank term loan lenders. And again, I'm not choosing the product first. I'm solving your business problem and problems first. One question I always ask myself, and you should ask yourself, is the capital fixing the symptom or is it solving an underlying problem? Because those are two very different things. Now you have business credit or to fund a startup. Startups require a different conversation and discussion. It's the challenge isn't normally poor performance, it's limited business history. So without established revenue or financial statements, lenders will oftentimes rely on heavily your, as the owner, personal guarantor, the owner, is your credit profile, liquidity, industry experience, and overall financial strength, adjusted gross income, personal taxable income, or its stated income, business credit cards at 0%. So every setup and every startup is different. So that's where creative credit-based funding strategies come in. Business credit development, or in some cases, property structured, 401k, rollover for business startups, ROBS as in short, strategy may become part of the discussion, and a retirement account, rolling it into a new 401k plan. There are other things, HELOCs, and so much more we can get into. That's why understanding the complete picture does matter. So you purchase equipment. Equipment purchasing is one of my favorite examples because the purpose is usually easy to measure. If you're financing a truck, a CNC machine, a medical piece of equipment, or more than one, restaurant equipment, or heavy machinery, construction equipment, I immediately ask something. What is the equipment producing in more value than it costs? Or is it producing more value than it costs? More so specifically is, when we break that down as a subsegment, is does it increase production? What does it do? Does it increase production turnaround times? Does it reduce labor? Does it increase capacity? Does it lower operating costs? Does it improve your quality? Does it increase gross profit? Does it increase net profit? Does it increase free cash flow? If we can't reasonably explain where the return is expected to come in from, we probably aren't financing or finishing analyzing the investment and the right investment. So if your answer is yes, that's usually a much better position you're in, then you can go into more of a stronger time to get funding, or we can get more into further the discussion on the funding finance. For commercial real estate, purchasing or refinancing commercial real estate, as you see on your screen, it's much more than simply buying a building. I know that underwriters are looking at the property's value, as is value, requested loan amount, current market value, a lot of things, loan to value, CLT, LTV, and there's so much more. Debt service coverage ratio. There's the occupancy, LTARV, business cash flow, CLTV, as mentioned, lease structure, and as a borrower, your overall financial strength. So depending on the situation, the best fit may be conventional funding, financing, SBA financing, or private capital. I also tend to ask why own instead of a lease? What strategic advantage does you doing this give you? What does that ownership create? Does it give you better control? Does it give you time to analyze before you want to own, before you have enough that you can own it? Is it a different property that you're moving into or getting in another location? Does it have lower, longer term occupancy costs? What's the depreciation? Does it have additional rental income, and what's the rate of return on that in cash-to-cash returns? Those answers matter. And then when you're doing a flip, what's the highest profit? So there's so much more to be asked, and internal rate of return, and there's net present values, and yeah, there's plenty of things that I could be getting into, but I won't spend too much more time on that. And then you have residential investment properties. Investment real estate follows its own set of guidelines. Here we may be looking at rental income, debt service coverage ratios, bridge funding financing, or value add projects, conventional investment loans, or private lending. So the financing should support your investment strategy and your exit plan, not just to help you close in on transaction. I need it soon. Not simply make your purchase possible. I also want to understand things like, what is the cash flow that's expected? What are you running on now? What are your running costs? What vacancy assumptions were to be made if somebody left or you're filling this in? Timelines. What repairs are anticipated? Rehab costs, renovation. What's the exit strategy for this? What do you plan to do? Do you plan to sell and expand, do this again, or buy more property the same? What's the next phase? What's your long-term hold? Is it a short-term bridge hold, refinance? Is it to sale? So it's strategizing before you even get into the funding and getting the financing. Now we have right here on this next slide, continued. We have access equity from existing real estate. You have HELOC, cash out refinance, and I could put more into there, but HELOC, cash out refinance can unlock that equity. And sometimes as a business owner, you have significant equity tied up in your home or investment properties, commercial real estate you own free and clear, investment properties, you have rentals, etc., different types of properties. So again, the HELOC or a cash out refinance can unlock that equity. And if you need to clear up debt, a HELOC could help. A commercial use HELOC, cash out refinance, there are different ways. There's debt restructuring. There's other formats. So because you're connecting a personal investment asset or assets to your business decision, I encourage you to carefully plan around that. So your business should have a clear use of the funds and add a realistic expectation to it of how the capital will improve your cash flow, how you'll make up for what you're paying in terms of debt, the profitability, and in the short and or long term, and a lot of times long-term value. So it depends on what you're doing, though, and the goal and the objective of taking that kind of funding. So you have then acquire another business, SBA 7A, bank term loan, acquisition financing, private capital. Business acquisitions require an entirely different level of an analysis. We're evaluating two businesses instead of one. Cash flow, customers, employees, existing debt, synergies between these, and more. Future growth. Financing should help create a stronger combined business, not simply make your acquisition possible. So I also ask, will 1 + 1 actually become 3? What does that mean? Will the combined business be stronger than both businesses individually? That's where you get the 3. That's where acquisitions create value. I've done plenty of these with acquisitions. So then we have expand your operations. Expansion is one of my favorite things for people to borrow money on. So hiring another team, opening up another location, purchasing additional equipment, expanding inventory, increasing production. There are measurable investments to be made. But before moving forward, I want to ask, how will we measure in that data that we have currently, but how will we measure whether this investment will be successful? I don't want vague answers, don't like them. I like measurable outcomes, more customers, higher production, better margins, greater capacity, faster turnaround, it's feasible, lower operating costs, better cash flow. Measurable goals produce measurable decisions. If we can't clearly answer that question, we probably need more planning before it's time to borrow. So leverage existing collateral. Some businesses have valuable assets they can leverage. You have commercial real estate, other forms, residential, equipment, accounts receivable, marketable securities, crypto, bonds, other eligible collateral. Collateral can reduce the lender's risk and expand your financing options, depending on how much they advance you or how much you get up access to 80 to 95, 80 to 90%, whatever it is of the receivables. Inventory, what does the inventory have to be? How does it have to look? And more, is it sellable in case of anything? So much. But I still want to look at things, and it's the underlying healthiness of the business is what you have to look at financially. Collateral does reduce that risk, but it shouldn't reduce your business's fundamentals and the good fundamentals to it. Strong collateral should strengthen a strong business, not compensate it for a weaker one, or not compensate for a weaker one, I should say. So solve a short-term timing gap is what we come to the bottom there, bottom left. Finally, let's talk a little bit about that, about revenue-based funding and merchant cash advances or cash advances, hybrids, or different formats. These products are MCA-like products. These products absolutely have a place. I've helped businesses where they've made sense, but I've also seen situations where they created additional pressure because their repayment structure didn't align with the business's cash flow. That's why I ask, and you should ask yourself, is what is the total cost? What is the repayment schedule? How will this affect my monthly cash flow? And most importantly, will the capital create more value than it costs? That's one of the most important questions in this entire workshop. Will this capital create more than value than it costs? Because funding is not in itself always expensive to the right circumstance and people in business, but it could be at the same time. But bad decisions are. That's what's expensive. If the answer then is yes, it may be an appropriate thing to do and as a tool for you to use. If the answer is not and no, no, we probably should explore something else. Or if that's absolutely what you needed to do right now so you can move into something else and refinance, consolidate. But even if you didn't and you needed to use it and you can get back and pay it back fast enough, that's something else. So if there's one idea I hope you remember from this slide and these slides, these last two, is don't just shop for funding, finance. Diagnose your business first with the right individual. Then choose the funding solution that best supports your objective and how you're going to be using your funds, then matches up with the right service. That's exactly how I approach every funding conversation and being a strategist in business development, understanding your full business and more. And what I've already seen in many businesses and numbers, assumptions until I have real raw or numbers or estimates, approximations. So I don't begin by asking which loan do you want. I begin by asking, tell me about your business. What are you trying to accomplish? But I don't even say, tell me about your business. Mostly I say, can you please tell me a little bit about your business and how it's been going and how it's been going for you this year? Sometimes I'll ask that. Other times I'll ask something else. Because once I understand your business, you're in this cold dialogue and discussion, conversation. It could be by email too. It doesn't have to be in or messenger. I do a lot in messenger on my social media, or it could be responding to a video or something like that. I go off from there and then I continue. Is it becomes much more clearer and smoother and easier. And so now that we've gone over this, we've matched business needs to funding solutions. I want to show you one final question before I go to the next slide. And before that, every business owner should answer before accepting any financing offer. Should you borrow at all? Before you borrow, then ask yourself. So before I go into that, throughout all this in this workshop, we've talked about becoming funding ready. We've talked about cash flow. We've talked about how lenders think, analyze, evaluate. We've talked about choosing the right funding and structure. Now, I want you to, when you leave with this, what I believe is one of the most important questions in business, should you borrow at all? Again, notice I didn't ask, can you qualify? I asked, should you do it? Because those are two completely different things to ask, questions. The first question I ask usually is, what problem am I actually solving? What problem am I really solving? Is this funding helping me purchase equipment? Is it increasing production? Hire another team, acquire another business, buy inventory before a busy season, many other things in a combination of these. Or am I simply using borrowed money to delay a problem that I still haven't been able to solve and still hasn't been solved? Understanding the real problems and problems always does come from better choosing financing. So you want to solve these before going into this financing stage. So understanding these real problems and the problem always comes before you choose your funding financing route. If I can't clearly define what success, growth, expansion, and all these looks like, and even downfalls, it's very difficult to know whether the funding was actually worthwhile. So am I expecting better cash flow, higher, healthier margins, more capacity, faster production, lower operating costs? You should be able to measure that success. Question 2, will this investment create more cash flow than it costs? This is probably the question I ask more than any other because it's a cash flow question. Let's say your loan payment was $2,800, $3,000 per month. Then I would immediately ask you, will the equipment, your marketing, your expansion, the additional inventory coming in or that has come in, whatever we're investing in, generate much more significantly than the $2,800 per month in additional cash flow surface or profit over time. But significantly cash flow, we want to have enough of it. If the answer is yes, there's a much stronger business decision. If the answer is unclear, I think we do need to revisit things. We need to slow things down and analyze things further. But I don't stop there. I ask how by how much, or over what period, 3 months, less than that, 6 months, 1 year. It's not just to temporarily improve something, and that's just the goal. It's something sustainable, long-term improvement. Then I ask, can my business comfortably make the payments? Can your business comfortably make the payments? Not barely, comfortably. Businesses rarely operate exactly as planned. Customers pay late, projects get delayed, expenses increase, they arise, equipment breaks. I want enough margin that one difficult month doesn't immediately create financial stress. Comfortable and comfortability is an important word and asset, I would say. I don't build financial plans that only work when everything goes perfectly. It's when it doesn't. It's when you're at your best too, when you're likely working under pressure. Healthy businesses prepare for uncertainty. So, what happens if revenue drops by 20%? That's another question. None of us can predict the future all the time, but we can prepare for uncertainty. If sales slowed, could the business still make payroll? Can you continue paying your suppliers and go up from there? Meet your loan obligations, stay operational. Think through those scenarios before borrowing. It usually leads to much more stronger decisions and better questioning. So those are realistic and resilient type of questions. Would payroll still be covered? Vendors, rent, insurance, taxes, existing debt, etc. If the answer is yes to that, the majority of it makes sense. Your business is probably in a much better, stronger position. Do I have another option besides borrowing? Sometimes the answer isn't yes, it's no, not yet. And that's perfectly fine and okay. But sometimes improving collections, adjusting pricing, negotiating vendor terms, reducing these unexpected, unnecessary expenses more unnecessary, selling unused equipment or improving inventory management can improve cash flow without adding another monthly payment, or if it's a biweekly, weekly, daily, or a combination. I also want to know, before even that, I want to know with this borrowing power you have, it should be only one thing in your toolbox, but how much of a borrowing power you have varies from business and owner to owner. So not just using only one tool as saying we just need to borrow every single time. So in asking things, could there be better collections? Could it be improved better? Could it improve cash flow with better collections, better pricing, better margins, fulfillment costs, other things, lifetime value, customer acquisition costs, can go on and on. Lower unexpected, unnecessary expenses, faster inventory turnover, better operational efficiency. Sometimes improving your business creates a better, longer term result than simply adding another loan. And then finally, is this helping me build the future, or is it simply to survive today for tomorrow? There's a big difference. Borrowing to remove something that's a strain, that's not letting you move, like a kind of like a gate, can't get over, can't get through, it's blocking you. It's a bottleneck. Expand capacity, acquire a profitable business, or purchase equipment that increases production can strengthen the company. Borrowing repeatedly just to cover ongoing business losses, expenses, without addressing your underlying issue and cause deserves much more something that you have to pay closer attention to. That's why I don't just look at, okay, let's separate and say, I believe the funding should ever be separated from the business strategy. You got to look at both together. And I do want to be clear with you too, is there's nothing wrong with survival financing when it's truly necessary. It's much needed. Businesses go through difficulty all the time. I have a lot of clients who come to me who have difficulties. Market changes, challenges, competition, events, a lot more. Unexpected challenges just happen. But if borrowing becomes your long-term strategy instead of solving the underlying issue, like I've been going into, and issues, the business itself crumbles. And it often finds itself facing the same challenges again year over year. So you're not really growing it. That's why I believe that the funding always should support the strategy, not to be a replacement for it and not to replace it. So if you remember nothing else from today, I hope you remember this. Funding isn't good. Funding isn't bad. A lot of times it just is. It's a financing tool. Like every tool, its value depends on how it's used and how much it's used before you have to get more in another one of those pieces. I don't measure your success. I don't just measure success by how much money a business borrows, not even at all. I measure the success by whether that capital helped you build a healthier, stronger, more resilient business, and in yourself too, as a person. That's the standard I try to bring to every funding conversation. This is my platform to help you in more ways than just getting the funding. So if you're thinking about funding your business, I encourage you to begin with the business itself, understand your numbers, strengthen your cash flow, improve your financial foundation, then choose the funding accordingly that truly fits your objective, your goals, your outcomes. Because that's how stronger businesses are built. Every dollar borrowed should have a purpose, as you see it there on the screen. So now what I'd like to do is throughout today's workshop, we've talked about a lot of things: principles, cash flow, underwriting, choosing the right funding. Now I'd like to briefly show you how those principles can look in the real world. One thing I've learned is that no two businesses are exactly alike: different industries, goals, financial situations, outcomes, timing. That's why I don't believe it's a one size fits all for all types of funding and businesses. Every business deserves to be understood, though, before recommendations are made. So there are many different types. And I just wanted to show you here at a glance, not to go too much into thorough detail, but a restaurant, we have dentistry, we have other businesses too that are not even on here, but real businesses, real funding, real results. And then over here, a continuation of it. And then also in helping people get out of debt, high cost debt, as you can see here with an automotive and vape shop, concrete construction business, a Mexican restaurant. There are many others. I could have put a lot more, so many on this, but I only selected a few and just wanted to show you that this is real and this is possible. So you see a lot of this, like with different businesses, with slippage and construction company simply looking for money. They're looking for additional production capacity. That's equipment financing made sense because the equipment itself was expected to generate more in work and more revenue over time. You have medical practices. They want to expand. Dentistries want to expand. More treatment rooms, more staff, more patients. Have longer term financing alignment before and to better with the longer term nature of the investments. For restaurants experiencing fluctuations, cost of the packaging, cost of the meat product and where they're getting it, farms and so much more. So there's a lot of expected seasonal fluctuations, not only with that, but other things that can happen and things that change from time to time. So a business line of credit can help somebody create more flexibility during slower periods with maintaining day-to-day operations. There's so much more that I can get into: startups, transportation, commercial, real estate. I hope you notice something, that none of these examples start with what's the cheapest loan. They start with what is the business trying to accomplish. That's the question I begin every funding conversation, and I believe it should begin with. Funding is simply one tool, again, that helps move the business forward. That's the objective. So if you're take one idea away from today's workshop, I hope it is this: we've covered a lot together. We've talked about cash flow, we've talked about revenue, we've talked about underwriting, we've talked about funding strategies, we've talked about becoming funding ready. But if there's one lesson to be learned, one idea, one mindset, and to take away that I hope stays with you after today's workshop, it's this: funding isn't the goal. Building a healthier business and you is. Because something interesting happens when you do that. As businesses become healthier, cash flow usually improves, financial reporting improves, decision making improves, critical thinking does too. Profitability often improves. You improve as a person up here in many ways. Lender confidence improves. Again, profitability often improves. Financing often improves with those options. Notice something though. Notice that none of these things begin with a loan. They begin with building a stronger business. That's why I don't think funding should ever be the first conversation or place to begin discussion. I think that the first thing should be, how do we build a better, healthier business? Build a healthier business. We need to start like that. Because healthier businesses in this way, they naturally create healthier financing opportunities in a healthier individual, healthier you, healthier people around. And that is a completely different way of looking at business, funding, and business in itself. I know that not always this message is the message that people expect to hear. And from someone in my profession, in my field, and I'm not like those in my space of what I do, what you've seen, what you've heard, and if I've helped you already, you would have noticed. Most people expect me to spend the last 30 minutes convincing you to borrow money, transactionary, or call me, or give you a call. It's not like that. A lot of times you have to meet me where I am at instead of going 50-50 or meeting you all the way over here. I have a process, energy and time efficiency, vetting out micro, macro commitments. And a lot of it, I can do it through messages and social media messages. I do a lot there. Send emails, send a welcome package email, and send so much more. After clarity, if it made sense to do a call, then it did. And oftentimes I find myself not doing that. We continue. This is how you can get started. It's submitted. It's in the back end for review. I ask for it up front. This is how I review, and then we can go in. Third party. This is how it'll go. That's energy and time efficiency and lining up what needs to make most sense. So that's how things are. So instead, my hope is that I've helped you think differently. If you become a stronger operator, individual, as a person, a better steward of your cash flow, more intentional with your financial decisions, funding simply is not just going to become another tool in the toolbox available to you, not the solution to every problem. That's the philosophy I try to bring to every person and individual inside of a discussion conversation I have with business owners. People are just getting started. So before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought. Every financial decision you make today shapes the financing and financial opportunities that you have available to your business tomorrow. Build accordingly. So before we wrap this up, I would like to just say thank you for spending the energy and time with me today. I know you have a lot of places you could be, and if you had to come back and watch it bit by bit, it's understandable. And there's a lot of information you could be consuming. So I genuinely do, and I greatly appreciate you. I'm very thankful for you being here. My true hope isn't that you leave here today thinking that you just need funding. It's that you were left with thinking, I understand my business better than I did before this workshop. There's more to uncover. Better understanding usually does lead to having better financial decisions made, and not just with debt, financial literacy, and a lot more. And better financing decisions often do lead to stronger businesses. Before we finish, I'd like to ask you one small thing in favor, if it's okay. When this workshop ends, go back to the post where you're watching this in the community, if so, or somewhere else. And if you're not in the community, down below in the description to check out the community and more resources will be there. So go back to the post you're watching this video and let me know your biggest takeaway in the comments below. I'd also love to hear one action you've committed to taking because of what you learned today and will. If this workshop raised any questions, concerns, comments you have, leave those in the comments below too. So I personally take the time to read them, and they are also helpful for me because of what future things I can do and help improve myself to help you do more. Future workshops, if any, and training would be most valuable for you in the community. So if you'd like to continue learning, here's exactly what I would recommend you do. First, download the 6-step pre-approval lending checklist if you hadn't. It's also in the welcome post. If you go to the featured post too, or if it's on this post somewhere or in the comment section, if not, then okay. But in the welcome post where I greet people into the group in a lot of cases, a lot of times, and you'll see it in the feature section. When you go to the group, click there, you'll see my welcome post. There's also the getting started guide that you might have already watched to get to here, but I'd check that out if you hadn't. So download the 6-step pre-approval lending checklist. It's a simple resource that will walk you through many of the areas lenders and underwriters commonly evaluate before a funding request is submitted, before going into pre-qualification application. Even if you don't need financing today, it will help you understand how to be better prepared for tomorrow in the future and what you shouldn't do in the past, what you've done or haven't done, and what you could be doing today. So next, watch the business credit building video series. It's a free video series I give you. And understanding business credit can expand your financing options, funding options over time, and help you build a stronger financial foundation for your business. I also show you how to get your business credit ready, forming your business and more. I have a document for that. And it's in the guides section too, unless there's an individual link that takes you to my site. I have that version too. But in the guides section in the community is where you'll be able to find it underneath guide 1, unless I move it. But there's different videos to that. Then if today's workshop helped you think differently about your business, here are 2 simple ways we can continue going. Option 1, send me a direct message with the word funding. You could say credit, but funding is one. Send me a direct message because I do a lot in Messenger on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and other places, and it's quick. And it could feel a lot closer too because I'm helping you instantly and I'm doing a lot of things there and where I'm at. Convenience. If that's the case, so funding, send me a direct message. I'll learn more about your business, answer your questions, and if it looks like I can help you, I'll send you my welcome resource package. I have a welcome email that I send with all types of services that you've heard more or less today, with links to Google Docs and more. And I could put it in an order that we should start here. And then this is a secondary resource, or here's how we would begin with extra additional resources, not just funding services. So a lot in one place that's convenient, ease of access, and fast. So you can always refer to it when you need to. Not that you needed everything, but you can always refer to it when you need it or if you don't. So at least you know. Qualifications, requirements, details, how to submit things, tips, resources, deep insights, and much more. And then, so that'll be there along with the next recommended steps based on your situation. Option 2, if you'd rather get started on your own, you can complete my business funding readiness questionnaire, not an application, if I still have it, unless I remove it. That gives me the information I need to better understand your business before making any recommendations. So I'm pre-underwriting, So before we go into an application, I'm understanding collateral, credit, revenue, where it is, and all this. Here's what would be best. You're describing what you need in your funding request, why you need this, what the funds are for, and more. Numbers would be helpful to add. So once I've reviewed that, I'll recommend the next steps based on your goals, not simply what's available, and be able to send an email back in return that way. Sometimes that recommendation isn't funding itself, or it is funding. It's improving cash flow. It's strengthening another part of your business first. My goal is to help you make the strongest long-term decision possible. Everything we've talked about today, including the free 6-step pre-approval lending checklist, the business credit building video series, my business funding readiness questionnaire, and my contact information, is available in the post description and in the pinned comment below this workshop, however much I put in there and what you see. If you're watching inside our Facebook community, or it's another community you see this in, I also encourage you to read the welcome post and explore the guide section. So in the feature section is my welcome post too. And then I have one next to it, which is the getting started guide, unless you saw that already or you want to go back to. So welcome post and explore the guide section, where you'll find great resources, and you'll find the additional educational resources, the business credit building video series, etc. Those resources designed to help you continue building a stronger business. So that's what I wanted to leave you with. If there's additional information needed, or it looks like there's a strong opportunity to move forward, we'll continue from there in a way that makes the most sense for your specific circumstance and circumstances. If there's one thing I hope you remember, is funding isn't the destination. People sometimes ask me, what's the best loan? I really rarely just answer the question immediately, or I will, but it's not the one you want to start with. Instead, asking, tell me about your business. Tell me where you're trying to go, where you want to get to. What's your vision? Tell me what's preventing you, what's waking you up to get to do it over and over, that keeps you inspired. What's preventing you from getting there? Tell me what success looks like 1 year from now, because once I understand the business, the funding, the conversation, where it's going, it becomes much more clear. Building a stronger business is because with stronger businesses, they create healthier cash flow, better financial decisions, more opportunities, and ultimately better financing options. So thank you again for being here. I truly appreciate your time. I wish you and your business much continued growth and success. I hope you got a lot of value from this, and you understand the parallels, the distinctions, and everything we've gone over. Oh, sorry, I didn't even switch slides. I was thinking through my thoughts. But yeah, as you can see, it's not just the goal. It's building a healthier business and businesses. It's generating stronger cash flow, making better decisions. I know this should be a K right there. Have more financing options, and then building long-term wealth. Don't chase funding, build a business lenders want to fund. So again, your next step, it's funding is not the goal. It's building a healthier business and businesses. And like I mentioned, it's downloading the free 6-step pre-approval lending checklist, watch the free business credit building video series, complete the funding readiness questionnaire. If funding makes sense, you'll receive my welcome resource package and next recommendation steps based on your situation. And again, better preparation, better decisions, better funding outcomes. And that again was after those places. So I wanted to leave you with that and those takeaways and what you received today. And just understanding what we're solving for and what we're doing. And if you have any questions you want to go over, you can always ask, reach out. I'm here to help, and seeing what's best and what's possible, and the direction we should ultimately go in, and not fluctuate or waver off so easily, something that we should have stuck with, and stick with it that way. So anything you want to leave me with in questions and comments and how you'd prefer to reach out, please do so. But that is going to conclude our time together on this. And again, look around this post and the pinned comment to get more information if you haven't already. And thank you again.